This is Darren Marchant with American Nomad News with a discussion on the linguistics of Minecraft and video game playing in general. We are in an electronic age, and every development of technology modifies the behavior of communities. This has been discussed in sociological circles. There's an amazing book written on the subject called The Third Wave by Alvin Toffler. I highly recommend it. And one of the things about that is that 20/20 hindsight is one thing. The challenge is that the future is not set. And from the now into the future is always fluid. The past is fixed. It's fixed in reality, but it is not fixed in the minds of the people and the living beings that have memory. Because memory is fallible and changeable, adaptive. And so many things change over time in regards to information. Language changes. And the technology that affects language changes that language. LOL is a term that was developed entirely because of the constraints of texting and the opportunities that were provided with early digital communication. And this digital communication stands on the shoulders of the technicians and people involved in the development of analog communication over electronic equipment. The telephone has evolved from the telegraph to a device where you generated your own electricity to make a phone call by cranking a generator on the side of the phone, to the AT&T lease phone and the cordless radio phones that if you had the right kind of television, you could pick up one half of the conversation the next block over. And what do we see now? We see entirely virtual environments that have fundamentally different operating paradigms to this physical universe. Right? I can pick up some sand in my hand. Some of it sticks to my hand. Sometimes it's dry and sometimes it's wet. Sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold. It's made of everything in the periodic table of elements, except for those elements that only last for a fraction of a second because we produce them in extensively powered, massive equipment. One of the terms that came out recently was Oblivion NPC. Actually, it's a phrase, which could also be stated Oblivion NPC character. It's essentially a noun. It's a type of thing. It's a person or a computer program that behaves in an erratic, perhaps aggressive manner in a somewhat nonsensical, shocking kind of way. And it comes from the attempts of computer programming companies that develop these virtual environments to simulate interactions in real life. And what some count as a failure has actually been recognized in the outside world with YouTube videos where people film obnoxious interactions with others and put them on YouTube labeled with the soundtrack that comes with the original program, Oblivion NPC Interactions. Something to that effect. This is linguistic evolution. And we're seeing this all over the planet. When I hung out with the Arabs, I learned from the Arab language that Western languages were subdivided. Now, if I go to England and I talk to somebody whose family line comes from England and they speak traditional London English, they'll say that I'm speaking English, even though my dialect is so different. The Arabs call it a different language. They call what the English guy is speaking Inglesi, and they call what the American, what I myself speak, as Ameriki. These are entirely different labels for languages that are closely related. And between the people who speak these two languages, we call it English. But between the Arabs and these other two groups, they call it Ameriki and Inglesi. We don't even have a label, as far as I know, for the sub-dialects of English, or perhaps other languages too, like Russian or Chinese, for video game or texting terms. This is a whole new branch of linguistics relevant to Minecraft. And when we get down to 2B2T, which is one of those virtual worlds, and Second Life, and Oblivion, and others. They're typically called games, but that's not really the core function here. It's an environment where someone can live completely anonymously and yet see a stand-in puppet for the people they interact with, as they themselves are perceived as a puppet with an invisible user in the background. And the puppet identities, avatars, are constantly changed. The icons are changed, the names are changed on the accounts. New accounts are made by the same human being, may have 100 accounts. Hundreds of different players that come in and watch YouTube videos, play video games, interact with themselves and with the other people playing those games, and nobody's really the wiser, unless they're very good at hacking or they own the network. And even then, who's who? And the linguistics of this is affected because those who have more ability to influence that environment are able to influence that environment linguistically, tactically, creatively, or in a harassing manner, more effective than people who have fewer accounts or who are less able to maintain access to those accounts. They can divide people from their relatives and friends whom they know in real life if these people depend on communication through social media. So the linguistics of video games is affecting our environment, even though many of us are completely unaware. Many online video games, from gambling sites to programs like Second Life or Oblivion, or military versions of these games, are underground communication networks, invisible to everyone except those who have caught on and used them. The interesting bit is that it is likely and perceivable that many people in the physical realm, in this real world, flesh and blood, stone and bone, see these interactions and the people that they know in the real life using these games for underground communication. Acknowledge it in themselves, but don't speak of it. Continuing to observe. And even this affects the nature of our communities. This is Darren Marchant with American Nomad News.